Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Thanks so much for joining us. Just checking my levels. I know we had a little issue yesterday. I think it sounds pretty good this morning. Thank you to everybody that reached out, by the way. It's hard to believe it has been 1 month on the air broadcasting from the Hesselson studio on Marcus Street. 1 month. This is our 1 month anniversary, and it's a special one because we're going to be talking with Allison Hunt, of course, the Corning City Council member, but also, you may not know, running for Steuben County Legislature. We'll be talking with her, so let me put my contact information up. If you have any questions, let me move over my chair just a little bit. If you have any questions for her, you can reach out right there and to anything about the program. I really appreciate it. We're also tomorrow on the program. I'm excited about this. Eileen Collins, Elmira native, astronaut. She has a book out, and she's going to talk to us about the announcement that we're going back to the moon and what that means and what the goal is with that mission, and get her insight, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. So that's on tomorrow's program. We already have the lineup for next week. I'll make some of those announcements on tomorrow's program. But again, contact me with any questions for any of our guests. There we go. Contact me at any time. Any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, want to weigh in on the first month on the air, you can do it right there. We can take that away. We have a lot of New York stories this morning as we talk about the budget and we talk about some of the bad policies coming out of Albany. There's more proof to that, more of this exodus. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Also, a few things here at the federal level, international level, maybe a little bit about the presidential race. We'll see how much we can get to, but I want to take our first short break. This was just kind of to set the scene, and then we'll get right into it when we come back. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Marcus Street in downtown Corning. We've been talking a lot about New York State, whether it's the budget, whether just kind of the dysfunction in Albany, or just the problems that we all are facing as New York residents. And there's no sense stopping now. We've talked about the mass exodus since the show first went on the air a month ago, whether it's with the Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, Assemblyman Chris Friend, even Joe Sempolinski, former congressman. So many people have discussed the problems. A lot of it goes back to, of course, bail reform, which is what the fight right now over the budget is all about. I know they've made a few little tweaks. There's been some negotiation, some discussion. We'll find out where exactly that's headed. But why I bring this up, people are concerned about their safety. People are concerned about their kids' education, of course. There's a lot of major issues facing us, and let's boil it down. Taxes, the cost of just living in the Empire State. And this proves our point. Exodus continues. This coming from the New York Post, and the New York Post is doing some wonderful reporting on this. More than 10,000, New Yorkers have moved to Florida just this year alone. It's only April 13th. Now, some of those people that are moving, and we talked about this, the attack on the wealthy and wanting to pay for everything off of their backs, why would they stay here? They have the finances go elsewhere. Florida, no income tax, makes a lot of sense. That's money, that's tax money that we're not receiving at the state level. And what does that mean? For those of us that stick around, we have to make up the difference because let's face it, they're not cutting back. You saw the budget numbers. It's not like they're tightening their belts as we have to do in this time of heavy inflation. No, they're going all in, as we mentioned before, something as simple as minimum wage at $21.25. Now, that has not been put in the budget, but there's protests for that. It's just constant attacks on businesses, attacks on residents, and then you've got in the budget just outrageous spending. So who's going to end up paying for all of that? Us. It's going to be on us that decide to stay here. But 10,000 New Yorkers relinquished their driver's licenses for the Florida version in the first quarter of 2023. Well, it's a mass exodus, and it's only going to get worse when we see what is being proposed in the budget. And then we go to the next story again from the New York Post, doing a wonderful job on reporting on this. Escape from New York, it says, as you can see on the bottom of your screen. New Yorkers are so worried about crime, going back to bail reform, where we not even coddle the criminals. We encourage the criminals, and we tie the hands of law enforcement. Sky high housing costs, that's perhaps, well, no, I wouldn't say it's just a city issue. And struggling schools. We know charters were a part of this negotiation as well. 27% of state residents said they want to move away in the next 5 years. Let's think anecdotally. How many people do you know that maybe have that 5-year goal, or maybe it's not even the 5-year goal, have already left? Friends, family, who, especially if your kids and grandkids, they go to school out of state and they say, why return home? Now, obviously, it's beautiful where we live. There's so many upsides to living here, but the downsides grow day by day, and in this case, budget by budget. A stunning 30% of respondents cited inept political leadership and soaring taxes as a reason for wanting to flee. Well, those two things are combined, and that's why I think a lot of upstate people are leaving, because apparently downstate has no problem with the high taxes and the inept political leadership, because they keep voting in the same people. They keep voting in the people that believe that we're not taxed enough and that we're not spending enough. So it's one of those things, you get what you deserve. It's us in upstate New York who are saying we're trying our best. We're voting in good people. What can we do? We're putting up huge numbers for someone like Lee Zeldin, but it can't make the difference against New York City. And that's why I think Lee Stefanik's new, I don't know if it's considered a PAC or a fundraising apparatus, trying to focus on New York to go more Republican. Nearly a third, about 31%, plan to leave the Empire State when they retire, while even more said they believe it's not safe for their kids. So more than 31% believing it's not safe for their kids. Now, one person that the Post interviewed said, we're going to Pennsylvania at the end of the month. And that's what I think here in our region we've seen time and time again. Though I would argue, and I think if you are watching our friends from Pennsylvania, I'd love to hear your take on this, but I think Pennsylvania is starting to go the way of New York. I know New York always looks to California for boneheaded ideas, and California looks at us for boneheaded ideas. Now Pennsylvania's been dipping their toe in that water for quite a little bit. So these numbers are staggering, but not surprising. It's tough. You're maybe saying, well, 10,000, Frank, 10,000 out of a whole state. That's a lot in the first quarter. And then when you look at the numbers of people saying they want to leave within the next 5 years, how many of you do have that? I would love to hear from you. Let me put my contact up. How many of you have that 5-year plan? Maybe it's a 3-year plan. Maybe it's a retirement plan that you're not going to stay in the state once you retire, or maybe when your kids grow up, or whatever the case may be. I would love to hear you on that, and I know I keep cutting me off. I will read those texts either in this program or on tomorrow's show, because this is not a topic that's going away as the budget negotiations continue. Again, the negotiations between 3 people, all Democrats, and they can't get it done. And I think that points back to what the survey found with the inept political leadership. But I don't say we, but, well, maybe we, I don't know who you voted for, but we keep voting in the same people over and over again and expect different results. I know that's almost become cliche about the definition of insanity, but I think that fits the mold. Let's take a short break. When we come back, a little bit more here on New York. Don't forget, Allison Hunt is going to be our guest. She's Corning City Council member, and she's running for Steuben County Legislature, so that's coming up in just a little bit. You're watching Frankly Speaking, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, as I mentioned, we have Allison Hunt coming up in just a moment. Just to wrap up our discussion on so many people longing to leave New York. This, again, coming from the New York Post, who is doing a great job. I don't want to keep reiterating that, but if you're curious about exactly what's happening with the mass exodus, I would highly recommend it. And they blame it. This is from the Post editorial board. They said, congratulations, Empire State progressives. Your years-long campaign to drive out average New Yorkers. I would argue not just average New Yorkers. I would argue the wealthy, all New Yorkers. I don't know why specifically average. But average New Yorkers via sky-high taxes, check. Job-killing regulations, check. $21.25 minimum wage being proposed. These type of things that are killing small businesses. They're killing big businesses. Why would a big business or a small business come to New York State at this point with the regulations? Soaring energy costs, which are only going to get worse, as we talked about with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. And, here we go, pro-crime rate policies. And then you add on top of it the hollowed out public education. And all of that's worked. That's been their goal of these campaigns. And now you've got, our guest is here. Here, I got to unlock the door. Oh, there we go. So there you go. That coming from the New York Post. So we have to take a short break because our guest just arrived. So stay with us. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Joining me for the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of the program is Allison Hunt. Good morning. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We've got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about the council. You've been on for how long now?
I have been on for 8 years.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was first elected in 2015, and I've been blessed to be elected a second time, 2019, and I'm running again for a third.
Wow. And you're going to be busy because you're also running for legislature, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But how were things going on the council all these years, but most recent, I suppose?
I feel like we've gotten a lot accomplished over the last 8 years. I'm the deputy mayor now. I was appointed by Bill Boland last year and again this year to be the deputy mayor and selected by the council. And I actually feel like we work pretty well across party lines here at the local level. Party doesn't seem to matter as much as people know it does at the federal and state level. So we've gotten quite a bit accomplished with the housing. I feel like we're doing very well with paving our roads and things that matter to people. We're getting a K-9 for the police department, and supporting our first responders is always priority to me.
I think it's interesting. We were talking off there. This is a 1 month anniversary of the show. So a month ago, it was Bill Boland. Now we have the deputy mayor right there.
Congratulations
I didn't say it like that. So I'm sure when you're out getting petitions signed or you've decided to run for re-election, you're hearing from people what their priorities are. And I'm not going to say concerns, but their priorities. What are you hearing from the people of Corning?
So there were a few things I heard when I was out collecting petitions. Obviously, the reassessment. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about that, and I think the mayor brought that up when he was on as well. And people, there's some confusion about how that will affect their taxes. Obviously, in 9 years, most people's homes are probably going to go up in value. Right. Just that's how the housing market works. It doesn't necessarily mean their tax bill will go up.
Sure.
It spreads the liability out a little bit differently. So that's been a huge concern. I live over on the north side, so I also heard a lot about the marijuana dispensary. And people are very opposed to that on the north side, where it's going to be located. In the former Leader building. So that was something that was brought up to me quite a bit.
I believe it. Has that come up a lot in general with the legalization of marijuana? Because we've talked about it a lot on this program with the both sheriffs, Chemung and Steuben. Has that been a major talking point?
Yeah, and I think it's some people aren't necessarily opposed to the legalization. It's the proximity to children and to other venues in the city that they have some concern about, and how that's viewed by society as a whole.
So when you look back at your 8 years, what would you say is your proudest accomplishment? That's a softball question.
Oh, boy. Well, I would say really the work we've done on the housing and the infrastructure here in the city. When people think about what their city council really should be doing, it's usually infrastructure and public safety. And we've done a great job working on housing. There's still more work that needs to be done. It's definitely a long-term solution that we've come up with, not a short-term one. And we've also, we're working on some housing developments over on the north side as well now. And we have some high-end housing, but we're also either redoing our low to middle income housing, or we're putting in senior housing. So we're trying to have a solution that fits everybody. So anybody can still live in the city, and we have a walkable city where people of a variety of incomes can afford to live.
And you mentioned public safety, and that's been a common theme with everybody that's been on the program. I know your hands are tied with bail reform and things like that, but you mentioned the K-9. I believe that Corning's doing the best they can with what they're stuck with, and that's my word.
We are. Obviously, we always try to put more resources towards our police and our fire department. We're definitely having conversations. Our fire department building is a little bit old. Starting to have those conversations about public safety buildings. But the K-9 is going to be a great program for the city. I think it's really a way for the community to interact with their police department in a positive way. The K-9 is going to be going into schools and meeting with children, and everybody loves dogs.
Yes, of course.
So it's going to be a perfect opportunity for us to really show the public how much the police department and our police officers deserve to be supported, and how much of a part of the community they truly are.
When you ran 8 years ago and you look today, what have you been surprised at maybe the most?
I think I'm surprised at how well we work together on the council.
Yeah.
I know over the years there's been criticism about how the council works together. We definitely have our disagreements.
Of course.
Some of them happen behind closed doors before meetings. Some of them happen during the meetings. But I think we've really made a priority to try to work across party lines. There's been a few contentious issues. The marijuana one was one of them where, I wasn't supportive of having dispensaries here in the city. But I actually think that now the proposal that has come up with where it could potentially be located, I think even some of the people that voted for it didn't expect it to be quite so close to neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's really the ability to work across party lines that's been surprising to me.
And it's kind of nice. I remember reading back in the day, reading about the council, and it was kind of a knockdown drag out a lot of time. You don't see that coverage anymore. Most of the time it's on major issues and it's from the public telling you and the other council members what they believe.
Exactly. And that's honestly what we need to hear. It shouldn't be about what our personal opinions are.
Agree.
We're elected to represent our constituents in each of our wards, and I think that's fantastic that we're able to do that.
And that's why I try to push on the show for people to go to meetings, because I don't think they realize what kind of impact they have. I know they may not be the most fun way to spend your evening, but they are very informative, and you get to say exactly to the people that make decisions for you day to day how you feel.
Exactly. And speaking of the reassessments and talking about how we spend our money as a city, coming up in May, we're going to actually have 4 budget workshops that the council attends and that are open to the public as well, because our budget starts July 1st, so we have to pass a budget in the month of June. So people should attend those meetings and tell us how they feel we should be spending our money, how their taxpayer dollars.
And you mentioned you're running for re-election. What would you like to see done in your next term?
I think I want to see a little more support for our police department and our fire department. We have downsized a little bit there in the past because of budgetary issues. And I think that they're seeing more work, more activity. And honestly, when they respond to calls, they don't know what they're going to get, especially with, the production of methamphetamines. And also the overdoses and the drug calls that we're getting here in the city are definitely spiking, unfortunately.
Yes.
And that's just a fact of everyday life to this point. And also people not being able to be held. So recommitting offenses over and over again in our police and fire department, both having to deal with those, primarily police. But they don't know what they're going to get. And I really feel like we need to support them as much as possible because they're not getting that support from the state.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel so bad for police officers that, it may be the same house they've been to now 10 times, and they're doing their job, but because of the bail reform laws, these people are back out on the street sometimes within hours.
They are. They are
committing the same crimes.
I was actually on the grand jury just after COVID, and we heard, unfortunately, I can't disclose a lot, but repeat offenders, where they couldn't hold them, and crime after crime, unfortunately.
And those are the names that you read. Those are the ones continuing to get in trouble. And you mentioned overdoses, and what a troubling scenario, not just in Corning, all over. I mean, talking to Sheriff Allard and so many others, we're handing out these Narcan kits like we used to hand out masks.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with that, I know we're trying to save lives, and I completely understand. But in some ways, they're having Narcan parties and things like that, where we don't want to encourage them to take doses where they know it's going to be potentially a lethal dose as well. So there is a fine line to tread here in regards to having that in the community and having that as a resource, but also encouraging people to go over the line. Obviously, they shouldn't be using it all, but I understand people do have addiction problems.
Sure.
And trying to solve the root of the problem rather than supporting them on the back end, I think, is where we need to focus. I
agree 100%. But imagine that Narcan party. That's terrifying to me.
I can't imagine. No. I don't know how somebody gets in that situation. I haven't been there, so to empathize with them as much as possible, but try to get them the help. Not try to, allow them to continue to use.
And I feel bad, really bad, for these people that have overdosed and didn't realize with this fentanyl, this scourge of fentanyl in our communities, that they didn't even realize that was a part of what they were doing. Again, I don't encourage drug use, but the people that did make that decision, they didn't expect that on the back end.
No, and they put it in everything now. It's not just in heroin, or it's, in marijuana and cocaine and everything else. So I obviously, people are going to do what they're going to do, but they should definitely take a second look when they're considering
I agree.
using.
I read something just yesterday that now there's a new one with fentanyl mixed with animal tranquilizers. for heaven's sakes.
Wow.
They're saying that's going to be the next big thing.
I hadn't heard that, but I know they're starting to
don't
test
know.
more to tell people if they've had fentanyl
Yeah.
in their system, because a lot of people don't realize what they're taking.
Terrifying. I didn't mean to get on that tangent,
No.
but can you stay with us for a break? Because I want
Absolutely.
to talk about the legislative race.
Absolutely.
And your petitions are in, right? So we're
Absolutely.
good to go. All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program. We have Allison Hunt in the studio. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Now, this is about the legislative race. Tell us first, I should have started with this technically, but what is your background? Why did you want to run for legislature?
Sure. Well, as you know, I've served on the city council for the last 8 years. I also have served in both federal positions. I work for our federal representative here, and then I'm the chief of staff for New York State Senator George Borrello currently. And so I've seen what the federal and state policies can do to local governments. I also come from a small business background. My father owns a small winery on Keuka Lake. I grew up working in a vineyard and helping with the winery. And the regulations that come out of New York State and how that impacts businesses and local governments has really given me a passion to want to try to help at the local level and mitigate as many of those impacts as possible. So I've enjoyed my time on the city council. I want to continue to serve there, but I really think a lot of the local policies coming from the state to the local level really hit at the county level.
They do.
All the mandates and things that we have to pay for. And so I want to figure out the best way that we can move forward with all the state policies. Obviously, I'm going to try to continue to push back against those. But really focus our dollars at the county level where best we can. And I think, as we already talked about earlier, public safety, infrastructure are really two of my main priorities. I do think, and going back to the drug issue, I think we need to work on some mental health issues as well. I think sometimes the drug issues can stem from not dealing with mental health issues. So there's definitely places that I want to work at the county level to try to focus our dollars.
So you must look at it as a challenge.
I do. It's a big challenge. And there's more and more things that the state are doing even now in their current budget that could potentially impact the budget here in Steuben County, our Medicaid dollars, and how we have to fund those here locally. And taking some of those resources away, there's going to be potentially a budget gap that we have to figure out, how we're going to make up for that.
And you kind of touched on it, but what do you think are some of the biggest issues facing Steuben? We talked about drugs, we talked about infrastructure, though I don't know if it's a huge problem with infrastructure, but it's something we need to work on.
It's always something we need to work on. We have a lot of roads and bridges here in a very rural county. It takes a lot of resources to keep those, and we love where we live, right? We're not good. No, we live here for a reason. We love our rural area. But the miles of roads and things here do take a lot of maintenance. And I'm sure that Jack Wheeler would tell you the same thing.
I'm sure.
It's a very expensive budget item. Having enough sheriff's deputies to be able to be on the road here in the county and make sure that everybody's covered. It's a huge territory. So, putting the resources into those agencies is critical. I can tell you my husband's actually about to join the Office of Emergency Management here in Steuben County, coming from Ontario County. He's a 911 dispatcher. And so, I get to see firsthand how first responders are impacted on a daily basis, living with him and talking to him about the issues they face, and just supporting those people is critical to me.
It's amazing. It was Sheriff Allard, of course, of Steuben, and Sheriff Schramm and Chemung. I had them both on, I think, the first week, and to hear the lack of people applying, and I think it goes back to what we were saying with kind of this attack on police, the attack by the media, but also what they're going through when they deal with these repeat offenders.
Absolutely.
Who would want to jump on that job?
And that's the thing. There's so many openings. I can tell you with the 911 dispatchers, when my husband applied for a lateral transfer, immediately they wanted him because they can't find people to fill those jobs. And I know that when Sheriff Allard was on, he was making a pitch for sheriff's deputies, for corrections officers, because it's a difficult place to work right now. With even the corrections officers, they can only do so much with the inmates, even if they're being abused.
Exactly.
If the corrections officers are being abused. So it's definitely a very difficult place to work, and I want to provide them with as much support as possible so we can have a hopefully an easier time recruiting people and know, that they're going to get the backing from their county legislature
Right.
when they work in Steuben County.
And it's a good job. It's a
Yeah.
stressful job, but I mean, it is a good job to have. I'm surprised that they're in that much need, but I guess I can't blame anybody for not applying at this point.
It's unfortunate in the day and age we live in that it used to be one of the most respected jobs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think we need to do a better job, and I have a son, and to raise them to know that they should be respected, and what they're doing is one of the hardest jobs you can do,
Yeah.
and they're protecting people, and it's mentally, physically, emotional. It's a very to bring those issues home, the issues
Right.
that they see every day that you and I don't have to see.
I know, and I'm sure you bring it home, but I think that's an attack again by the media and pop culture that makes
Absolutely.
it so difficult, and we've got to steer away from that, because I think what we're seeing in New York is when we don't respect the police and we tie their hands, it's the crime issue.
When
It's
did
supposed to-
police become the bad guys and the criminals become the good guys?
Yeah.
I don't understand it, especially here in New York State. We're letting criminals out of jail,
Yes.
but we're basically handcuffing our police and our first responders. I've been saying that, and I think most people feel that way.
I think so too.
I think the general population feels that way. I think there's a few that are just shouting the loudest that don't, and that's unfortunate. And we need to come back to our root values.
Yeah.
And believe that criminals should be in jail, and our law enforcement should be supported.
Yeah, I mean, I was bringing up at the beginning of the show, if you look at the polls, the reason people are leaving, one of the major issues is because of safety.
Absolutely,
And-
and I don't blame them,
No.
but I want to do whatever I can to keep them here.
Exactly, and like Sheriff Aller and so many others said, we're not immune from that here.
No.
But at the same time, our public safety is doing the best they possibly can, and they're doing great under the circumstances.
Well, did you see the situation yesterday up in Hammondsport where somebody literally drove a
Yeah.
truck through the quick fill
Yeah,
and
I know.
just to rob the building? I mean, it's incredible now. And that's
Crash
big
and
city
burn.
crime
Yeah.
that we're all of a sudden experiencing
Exactly.
here in rural America.
You would have thought you were reading that in the Post or the Daily in
Yeah.
New York City, but it's happening upstate, sadly. So let's talk about the campaign, because I like petition time. I know that's not the most popular thing to say, but I love getting petitions because you get to talk to people, right?
Absolutely.
And you get to, it's one-on-one town halls, if you want to look at it that way. So how has your campaign been going and the petition season been going?
Sure. I went out and I was able to get 100 signatures on my own.
Oh, good for
I
you.
have to file 108, so I had the support of the Republican committee also
Good.
out there caring for me. I couldn't do it without them.
Yes, of course.
But I had some wonderful conversations. Obviously, I know a lot of people already here in the city. I did run for the Steuben County Legislature 4 years ago, lost by less than 3%.
I know.
Unfortunately, the person that currently holds the spot has been convicted of some crimes. So I chose to run again. I really
Give
do
it a
think
shot.
that I could bring a little bit of validity back to the seat.
Yes.
And that's the voice I want to be. The voice of common sense. And so I've had some wonderful conversations. People are, generally concerned about the same things, the crime. They want to see, the housing improved. They want to make sure that their neighbors are good people and good communities. And especially, I live over on the north side. Not a lot of rentals over there, but there are some. But, people just want that community feel. And I know it's the same thing on the south side.
It is.
I've had the opportunity to knock the whole city before. I plan to do it again.
Oh, of course.
It's a great opportunity to really meet people, meet them where they're at, find out what's important to them.
When does the campaign kick off in full gear? When are you going to hit the ground? Have you already hit the ground?
Petition season is always my kickoff.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
always
it.
going.
Okay.
So I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. People can reach out to me at any time, but I'll be knocking on their doors too,
Okay.
hopefully not bugging them too much. But I plan to get out there and meet people, and it's critical that we take this time to do that. You can't at the day after Labor Day say, I'm going to all of a sudden start campaigning.
Right.
There's over like 5,000 houses in the city of Corning, or slightly over that.
Yeah.
It takes time to get out and meet everybody, but that's my goal.
Yeah.
It's important they know who could be potentially representing them. But I encourage people to reach out to me too. If I'm not at their house, they can always contact me. I've got a Facebook page, Allison Hunt for Corning. Okay. It's got my cell phone number on there. It's got my email on there. So I just encourage people to reach out if they've got an issue. I mean, they can reach out on city issues. They can reach out on county issues. I'm happy to chat about both, or anything that's on their mind, of course.
So at home, do you have a map of Corning with 5,000 tacks, and you just put them in every house?
I have a list.
Okay, all right, so
but
it's
I've done this before.
Yes.
So I have my Excel spreadsheets and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I run down through the list. I go to each house. I knock on your door, and If you're not home, I try to leave a little something for you, just so you know I was there. But yeah, that's it's a challenge to reach that many houses.
It's a lot of houses.
It's a lot of walking. So
Yes.
I've got my walking shoes ready to go. You might see me out with my son. I have a
that'd be
9.5-month-old son who's going to be hitting the campaign trail with me, and maybe my husband too. But everybody loves a baby.
Yes,
So.
yeah. And he's your campaign manager,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know we'll talk again before, obviously, but before Election Day, what would you say to the voters? Kind of make your pitch, if you would.
Sure. I've been serving the city for the past 8 years. I've served as the deputy mayor for the last 2. I feel I have a very good grip on what's going on here, both at the city level and at the county level. There's some issues that we need to address, and I want to be the voice of reason at the county level. I want to work with everybody, whether you're a Democrat, Republican. I know a lot of people are not registered with a party anymore because they're upset with the parties. Trust me, I get it.
I get it, yeah.
I'm upset. I'm a registered Republican, and sometimes I'm upset with my own party.
Yeah, of course.
So I want to be a voice for everybody. And I also want to address what's important to people here. And that's not always what's important at the county level. Sometimes there's smaller issues here that need to be addressed. So I would just encourage you to get to know me. If you want to reach out and talk, I'll have a cup of coffee with you.
Perfect.
That's my goal, is to really just get to know people. And sometimes it's not even about the political issues. Sometimes you just want to make sure your family's safe. You got a good school for your kids to go to. You got a nice place where you can retire, raise your grandkids here, hope that your kids stay here.
Right.
That's my goal too. I've got a young family, and I want to raise my son here. I want him to stay here. If not in Steuben County, in New York State. I know we're seeing that drain, and that's really my goal.
I always get chatting. I apologize about that. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you to Allison for being our guest. I really appreciate it. That was a very informative interview, and I hope to have more. Here's my contact, because I know there's a lot of people running for office now. And it doesn't matter what level you're running for. Just let me know. I'd love to have you on the program. Maybe it's a 5-minute interview. Maybe it's a 15-minute interview. I know some people are nervous. They're not used to doing media type stuff, but I think anybody you can talk to that's been on this program, either here on TV or on radio, will tell you that it's once you get going, it's easy and you'll enjoy it. So come on the program, or let me know. Maybe there's a candidate you want to hear from, see on TV. Please reach out. I love hearing from you. So thank you again to Allison. Tomorrow on the program, we'll have Eileen Collins. How about that? Astronaut, Elmira native. Be our guest. I'm just checking my break here. Will be our guest tomorrow on the program. Next week we have a lot of special interviews as well. It's 1 month. It's hard to believe it's been 1 month, and we've covered so much. I'm having a blast. I hope you're having a blast. I hope it's you're a part of your morning now to join us on Frankly Speaking, starting at 7 a.m. here on Big Fox, and watch us broadcast from the Hesselson studio. Now that the weather's nice, today, bad example, but we've been getting some waves. So stop by the studio, wave. You can maybe see on camera. So let's take another short break, because I ran just a little bit long with Allison. But when we come back, a few more things about New York, quite a few other topics of the day to discuss. So I'm asking you to stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We were talking before about the New York State budget, and obviously with Allison Hunt, we were talking about some of the issues we're dealing with at the local level because of decisions, I was going to say horrible decisions made in Albany, and some of the struggles we have here locally and in more rural areas. But let's take a look at the federal level for just a moment. This coming out, I believe, just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. The Fed saying a recession this year in potential blow to Biden. Just a potential blow to Biden. Okay. This is when you know it's coming up on an election season and who the media perhaps may want. Federal Reserve economists believe that recent banking turmoil will trigger a mild recession. Mild later this year. A potentially ominous sign for President Joe Biden. So it's going to trigger a mild recession. I don't think that's normally the term the media would use, depending on who's in office. But then, and this could be a signal that they're not sure if Biden will be the ultimate candidate, saying an ominous sign for Joe Biden. Their projection was for a mild recession starting later this year, with a recovery over the next 2 years, subsequent 2 years, that would spark a jump in unemployment. They figure, doing the stats, full recovery by 2025. That seems a little unlikely, but you start looking at, first of all, I think many of us know that the economy's not good. We know inflation's bad. You pile that on top of what is a recession. Did you realize in the first 6 months of fiscal year 2023, it is projected, this is according to the monthly Treasury statement, the federal deficit topped $1 trillion in the first 6 months of fiscal year 2023. That's October through March, okay? So it's a little bit different there on and maybe what you were thinking. So $1 trillion deficit, even with the tax revenue coming in. And then we wonder why inflation's run amok. We wonder why it costs us so much money to go to the grocery store, to fill up our gas tank. And this also ties in a little bit with this topic as a whole. You know, I've been bringing up a couple topics for maybe every episode for the last month. Bail reform, safety issues, but also China and the threat to China. We had a great conversation, if you haven't seen it, with Joe Sempolinski. You can find it on our YouTube or on our Facebook page, talking about this real threat posed by China and their ultimate goal of being a world superpower. Many have been predicting that. Marco Rubio had a nice op-ed yesterday or the day before talking about we can't lower our naval standards like Biden is proposing when China is ramping theirs up. But you also look at it from the financial standpoint. I can take that part of the screen down, American imported, let me try that again. America imported $78.8 billion. Let me read that again. $78.8 billion in cell phones and other household goods from China last year. I mean, these numbers are staggering. Again, this goes back, and you're saying, well, why is this so important? It goes back to that idea that we keep mentioning where China wants to be the world's superpower. And how do they get fiscally? They've got power over us, over the supply chain, obviously, especially when we're spending $78.8 billion in cell phones and other household goods, and that's when we were struggling with the supply chain. But they can withhold that supply chain, which is terrifying, why so many have called for, especially when it comes to medicine and things like that, to eliminate China from the supply chain on those issues. And now you've got the poking, whether it's with Taiwan, whether it's meeting with Russia. I think this is more of a short-term thing than the long year, and I get it. Like former Congressman Tom Reed said on the program, they believe they have us in checkmate. Tom believes, and I hope he's right, that just have us in check, that we're not out of it yet, but in not only China's mind, but in Russia, who want to team up, and essentially they believe they have us. But we have to do better when it comes to giving $78.8 billion to purchase our cell phones that so many people are addicted to and other household goods. It doesn't state exactly what those kind of accessories are. But there we go. So there was our federal update. A couple other things we'll get to when we come back, but it's already time to take a break, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Thanks again for joining us on this beautiful morning. It's beautiful out on Market Street, I know that. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. A story that I think may become a major issue if something isn't rectified very soon. This coming from Military Times. There's a lot of concern from lawmakers because priests were booted right around Easter, if it wasn't even that weekend, from Walter Reed campus. Republican lawmakers want to know why a group of Catholic priests are barred from Walter Reed National Military Medical Center just before Easter week. So there's my answer. Right before Easter week services, leaving troops with limited options for their celebrations. The clergy from Holy Name College were told earlier this month that they were no longer permitted to access the grounds for religious services. It's incomprehensible that essential pastoral care is taken away from the sick and the aged. That's from Catholic Archbishop Timothy Broglio of the U.S. Archdiocese for Military Services. What Walter Reed is saying, and I just bring this up because we talk about a time when we keep bringing up the poll about people not as religious as they once were, and we see this kind of culture, whether it's in government, whether it's in education, or now we see it sadly in the military, where it's going less about what the job is and more about making sure all of kind of the woke boxes are checked. So that's why I think it raises a lot of questions and a lot of concerns from various lawmakers. So we'll keep you updated on that. I thought that was very interesting. It's something I hadn't really seen in too many places, but worth, I think, our time in finding out why, get to the bottom of it. Apparently their argument is they have a different contractor that's coming in to provide religious services. Not sure. The organization that was there before, Clergy or Holy Name College, said that there wasn't a Catholic priest in that contract, but we'll try to get to the bottom of it if I hear anything more about it. It just seems to be a common trend when it comes to religion, various social issues as well, where the government and where certain agencies are headed. So that's why we wanted to bring you that story. One last weird one, because I said this guy didn't have a chance. His own family wasn't supporting him. But now we learn that Aaron Rodgers may have endorsed RFK Jr. for president. We know that there were some Aaron Rodgers things with the vaccine originally, and that's, of course, what every article about RFK Jr. is about, that he's anti-vax. His own family, I guess, is very disappointed that he's running. You never know with those anonymous source articles, right? But Aaron Rodgers tweeted out Kennedy 2024 with a bunch of emojis that I guess I probably don't understand their full meaning. But they're suggesting it's somewhat of an endorsement. And yesterday we brought up the fact that Tim Scott announced that he was running or setting up his run for president. Really interesting op-ed from him this morning in the New York Post, or I guess when he announced, so a little bit later yesterday. Our nation's soul put to the test. We must fight the liberal agenda if you have a chance. That is a man who is running for president. I think right now it's former President Trump, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott on the Republican side. And as far as I know, RFK Jr., the only one, right? Oh, no, Williamson. She is running as well. So, all right, that does it for us today. Thank you again to Allison Hunt for being on the program. Tomorrow, we'll be talking with Eileen Collins, astronaut, Elmira native. So we really look forward to that. Have a great day, everyone. And please join us tomorrow morning on the Friday edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.